Why is Dan Quinn concerned about this aspect of the Commanders? Why is the team being split in half? And who's ready for a scrimmage out in Ashburn tomorrow? Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Full Command Show. My name is Grant Mitchell, and we are here to talk about everything involving the Washington Commanders. Yes, I am live. This is the first time that I have ever done this, so we are going to work out the kinks live as we go, but hopefully it's a great show. If you guys are in here while I am recording, then feel free to drop some comments, and I'm going to try to respond to them as we go through while also sticking with the content for this episode. If you guys are new here, I do encourage you to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button as well if you want to support the first ever live stream, and go to the comments. Let me know if this is something that you would like to see more often, maybe during games once the season starts, maybe after games, so we can hash out our reactions live, whatever the case may be. I'm always open to feedback, and I love hearing from you guys. So let's talk about what we got coming up on this episode today. A couple of housekeeping notes, just like I always start every show with. I mentioned earlier today, this is my third video today, mentioned earlier that Landon Dickerson suffered an injury during a team practice. Well, there is an update on that. The big Eagles offensive lineman has a meniscus injury. If it's a mild tear, it could only be 2 to 4 weeks of rehab. If it's moderate to a severe tear, then it could be a 4+ month injury, even a season-ending injury. That is what J.J. McCarthy dealt with last year. Good news for, let's be honest, even though he's an Eagle, we don't want to see injuries. John Clark of NBC Philadelphia said that he only needs a minor procedure, not a full repair, will be week to week, and hopes to be a bit available for the week 1 season opener. Forget who they play. Good news. Again, you never want to see an athlete go down with a big injury. Final bit of housekeeping before we get into some comments from Dan Quinn today. There's a tweet from @JDanielsMVP on Twitter who got a picture from @Taywop with 3 Ps. I feel funny reading that. There was a picture of the RFK Stadium being torn down. I guess demolition has begun. I'm not out there, so I can't confirm that. But with the vote, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, with the vote advancing the proposal to a final vote in September, it really does seem like it's just a formality at this point, and the stadium is being moved back to the old RFK site. So sounds like demolition has begun for that. I'm not 100% certain, but exciting times ahead because the stadium renderings, if you guys haven't seen them, they look freaking awesome. Domed roof, big campus on the outside with retail stores, bars, restaurants, just a block away from the stadium Armory Metro site. It's going to be really freaking cool. And I can't wait to get down there in 2030 when the planned opening date is. Okay, so let's jump into some comments from Dan Quinn here because he was speaking to the media before practice today. Practice was only a jog through. I really don't have anything to share from what actually happened out on the field, but there were some revealing comments from the man Dan Quinn. So here's what he said. Number 1 on Dominique Hampton, who was released earlier today. If you missed my video earlier, I gave you all of my thoughts about that release, why it was so surprising, what it means for the future, and how it relates back to Adam Peters, and believe it or not, the Terry McLaurin saga. But here's what DQ had to say about Dominique Hampton. This is a direct quote here. We try to give as much support to all the guys as we can, but if it's not going to fit, we'd rather give him a chance to go see if he can do his thing somewhere else. We have high regard for Dom, loved working with him, but if it wasn't going to fit, then we want to give him a chance. Now, again, I already put out a video with my full thoughts about the Dominique Hampton situation, so I don't want to totally rehash it, but in case you missed that video, just to sum it up very quickly, I was excited to see Dominique Hampton because he does have this great athletic profile, and I thought that the best version of himself could greatly maximize the Commanders' athleticism in the middle of the field, because as I've always said, Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvo are excellent, but they aren't speedy guys. They aren't rangy guys going sideline to sideline in the middle of the field. The best version of Dominique Hampton could have been that. But watch him in the preseason. He played small. He seemed a little out of place, unsure of himself. And I was willing to say that maybe that was due to rust. But evidently, Joe Witt Jr., Dan Quinn, Adam Peters, the decision makers, they said, no, this just isn't going to cut it. And so they have moved on from him. Again, it's just very interesting when Jordan McGee hasn't been able to get on the field, and Kane Medrano is a converted wide receiver, yet they seem to have earned more trust than Dom Hampton did. So shout out to Dom Hampton. Also, the Commanders did sign Duke Riley, something I mentioned earlier. Dan Quinn said that it wasn't really about bringing experience or a certain player, just that it was time, that's a direct quote, it was time to bolster the linebacker room. They brought in 7 guys to try out, and evidently Duke Riley was the standout. So Duke Riley, welcome to the Commanders. Something really cool coming up for the next couple of days. Today, Dan Quinn split the team up into 2 separate teams, burgundy and gold, and those will be the teams for the next 2 days moving forward. That isn't just the players, it's the coaches, it's the strength and conditioning staff, everybody. So they're going to get into a scrimmage tomorrow, and I would assume Cliff Kingsbury and Joe Witt Jr. will be on opposite sides, which means that you're going to have a new offensive play caller for one of those teams and a new defensive play caller for the other one. And DQ, I love the holistic approach to the way that he runs his program. It's not just with competition for the players and practice. This is competition for coaches, but also experience. I remember when Joe Witt Jr. got hired and Dan Quinn was the defensive coordinator in Dallas, and Joe Witt Jr. was a DB's coach. DQ had allowed him to call plays during the preseason to help him prepare for the day that he got promoted to being a defensive coordinator somewhere. Lo and behold, that's in DC with DQ, but he had helped him take those steps to prepare him for the next step in his career. So I just view this as another situation of that, whether Ken Norton or an offensive assistant, a David Blau, whether one of these people gets an actual coordinator job elsewhere, or if Kingsbury gets poached, if Witt Jr. gets poached, well, you have a guy on staff who has called plays before, and it's not such a sharp adjustment. He's actually gotten his feet wet a little bit. So I thought that was really cool. I don't know what the teams are as far as burgundy and gold. I don't know who's on which team. I know that Debo and Jaden are on the same team, and I know that Mike Sainer still is on the opposite team. Apparently, the Jaden Debo team, the offense was huddling up. Sainer still tried to join their huddle. They threw him out. That was pretty cool, apparently, according to some reports. Also, there was a chant going around at camp, or at practice now. I guess we're out of camp. There's a chant going around at practice, Jaden, Jaden, and Debo joined in. So the vibes are still good. 30-point loss in preseason, not what you were hoping for, but it is only the preseason. 30 players didn't play, and the vibes still seem sky high. Those 2 teams will break into their scrimmage. Practice starts at 9:30 tomorrow, and they will be scrimmaging, and I will be reacting to all of that. Not going to be there myself because, unfortunately, I do have a job. Would love for this to be the primary income one day, but the day still seems a long ways away. I just started a month ago. I'm not going to get ahead of myself. But whatever the team reporters, the local news, whatever they're saying, I will make sure that I jot it all down and I get it to you guys for tomorrow's video. So once again, do hit that subscribe button if you want to be up to date with all of the latest news. Now, one thing that I do want to point out here is this was not a reactionary decision to the loss against the Patriots. This was not, oh crap, we just got our butts kicked. We need to have a scrimmage because we need to get the level of competition. We need to get our preparedness up. DQ made sure to pour cold water on that. He said that he had this idea a while ago during the summer when he realized that the week 1 preseason game was on a Saturday and the next one was on a Monday. So it's almost like when you have a Thursday night game during the middle of the season. You don't really have a bye week, but it's like a mini bye because while everybody's getting 6-7 days of rest, you're getting 9 or 10. So I understand what he's saying, and I believe him that this was not reactionary. I think it's a cool decision. I don't know if this is something that he's done before. It's not something that's totally conventional, but we know they love preaching competition, and we know they love mixing units together. So I would assume you're going to have 2nd and 3rd string linemen with Jaden Daniels and Debo on the offense, and they're just going to mix it up. And I think this is just another part of that. So let me talk about the title and the thumbnail of this video, which is, why is Dan Quinn concerned? Well, this was a question that was posed to him, and I wish I wrote down the media member. My apologies for not doing that. But someone asked him how big of a concern it was that Brandon Coleman is out and Sam Cosmi is out, and also Laramie Tunsil strained his groin at practice yesterday. I'm telling you right now, it's not supposed to be anything big. He participated in the jog through today. He's expected to be in the scrimmage tomorrow. But Tunsil did have the groin strain. Cosmi, we know, is out recovering from the ACL. Coleman, this ankle injury, we don't really have an update on it. We don't know if it's a grade 3 sprain. We don't know if it's just a little roll and he's just a little sore, but whatever it is, he is out. And so Dan Quinn said that he is concerned that the offensive line is not developing the chemistry. Because at the NFL level, when you're facing great edge rushers and great interior pass rushers, which the Commanders will be in week 1 when they host the Giants with Dexter Lawrence and Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns and Abdul Carter, you need to be on the same page, because unlike defense, you don't have time really to talk to one another. Everything's happening so fast. It's called the point of attack for a reason. You got to be on your P's and Q's. So he said that's concerning. With that being said, he also noted that it is a bit of a blessing in disguise, because when you get to week 18 and you're looking back on the entire regular season, you're not going to be able to pinpoint too many games where an entire unit stuck together. Even possession to possession, guys are going to go in and out. Someone's going to get banged up with a shoulder injury. They're going to go to the blue tent for a quarter, and then they'll be back for the next quarter. Or maybe they play 3 quarters and they get banged up and they're out for the 4th. And now you're relying on a Trent Scott coming in as a swing tackle, a Chris Paul, a Michael Dieter we saw. I think it was the Falcons game, the Falcons of the Buccaneers game. Michael Dieter was in there. And we saw that Jaden, there was a clip, one of the mic'd up clips that the Commanders post on their YouTube. Jaden was yelling at him. He's like, let's go, Dieter. Let's go, Dieter. And I'm not saying that was anything bad, but it's just a point that, like, things change. And if Tyler Biadasz is in there, maybe Jaden's not saying that. Maybe he's not in such a hurry. Got a little comment here from Doug. Pay Terry 29-year and Go Skins. Yep, Go Skins, HTTR, HTTC, obviously. I will circle back to this. I promise. I did just want to throw that up there to let you know that I did see it. I want to get through the notes about Dan Quinn's press conference today, and then I will get back to that, and we can have the Terry conversation. So O-line, again, concerning that the starting 5 isn't developing its chemistry, getting its reps together, but also a blessing in disguise because they're getting to work with other people and get more comfortable with more of those teammates. Moving on to young guys here. This is all the other notes I have left. DQ talking about the young guys. Unsurprisingly, said that he was impressed with Trey Amos. He's comfortable playing him in man coverage, and he's just been very developed. The game appears to have slowed down. That's a quote that came out of Trey Amos's mouth, actually. And look, I don't know how many times I have to say on this channel, Joe Witt Jr. and DQ have made it very clear they want to play man coverage all year. They're showing their hand to their opponents, but at the same time, it's not like they're revealing a complex zone scheme where you can throw disguise. Man coverage is man coverage. If you can stick in front of your guy, there's not a whole lot the offense can do. Now, the problem is going to be, do the Commanders have the personnel to stay in front of their men? Because Marshawn Lattimore last year wasn't great. Willing to give him the excuse of being injured and traded midseason. But week 1, with Malik Neighbors on that side, we're going to find out very quickly. Is Marshawn Lattimore, is Mike Sainristil, is Trey Amos, are they able to play the sticky man coverage the defense or the defensive decision makers want them to play? Because the Commanders want to heat up the opposing quarterback. They want to blitz Frankie Louvu. They want to bring the pressure, but you got to hold up in man coverage to do that. But DQ evidently impressed with Trey Amos, as it seems that everybody is. So really not a shock there. He also had glowing praise for Jalen Lane. There's another direct quote. He says, he's really comfortable in the offense and on special teams. This group of rookies has really put good work in. He's been all that we thought coming into it. We were thinking punt returner first, but he's developing on the offensive side at a faster rate. That last part of that sentence there is really something that stands out. Because if I hearken back to when Adam Peters called Jalen Lane on draft day, they were talking about, hey, man, you're the best returner in this draft. When he's doing interviews, people are asking him more about his return duties than they are his receiver duties. They ask him what's his favorite play. He says it's a punt return touchdown against Marshall when he was at Virginia Tech. Nobody was really talking about him as a receiver and the dimensions that he could add to the offense. Whether it's Terry McLaurin's absence that has allowed him to step up and earn more reps and show himself, whether he's just a gamer and he senses an opportunity, he's taking it, or, which is very possible, whether he was just hidden at Virginia Tech because their offensive scheme was atrocious and their quarterback wasn't a great thrower. No offense, Kyron Jones, and Kyron Jones was injured. Like, all of those things could be true, but Jalen Lane, by all accounts, is seizing the opportunity. That's something that we've heard from players, from coaches. Zach Ertz said something about it. And this is without Terry even being in the room. There was a cool moment with Kay Adams. She was interviewing Jalen Lane before the draft. She asked him who his 3 favorite receivers were, or who he thought the 3 best receivers in the league were. And he put Terry in that list. And look, I'm not going to tell a professional athlete that he's wrong. I think conventional wisdom would be that Terry's not a top 3 receiver. But for him to say that before the draft and then get drafted, Jalen Lane, I would assume, would love to learn from Terry. And Terry can absolutely teach him some things because I love Jalen Lane. I love his potential. He's got a long way to go as a route runner. He's got the tools and he's got the skills. Like, I'm not saying he's bad, but he can improve. And Terry certainly would help him do that. But even without that veteran presence being there, he's been able to do his thing and turn some heads in practice. So shout out to Jalen Lane. On Kane Medrano here, more from DQ. They said that they're still figuring out where his best spot is. They've lined him up at inside backer, outside backer. They've even had him rush off the edge. They want him on the field. They just don't know exactly where his best spot is. They mentioned that they've been putting him in man coverage against tight ends frequently. Again, back to that man coverage bit. And DQ said that he provides versatility. That part's absolutely true. And when Kane Medrano was first drafted, I don't remember who the interview was with, but I do specifically remember him saying that he can stick with tight ends, he can stick with running backs. And when you think about his background as a wide receiver, it makes sense. Not that those skills are directly related, but they're very similar. And if you're a receiver and you have the speed and you have the agility, the stop start to get past your defender, then you should, in theory, be able to do that on the other side, especially with a tight end who, while they present physical challenges, it's not like you're being asked to guard the number 1 receiver. You're not guarding Jamar Chase. You're not guarding Justin Jefferson, Malik Neighbors, A.J. Brown. It's a tight end. Like, there are great athlete tight ends in the NFL, but they're not as quick, as mobile. They make up for that in size and strength, but Medrano himself looked really physical. I was impressed with just how commanding he looked in the middle of the field in that preseason game. Going back to Dom Hampton, and not to kick a man while he's down, but seeing the two of them in the middle of the field, Medrano looked like he belonged, and I didn't expect that for a former receiver. Hampton looked small, and when you consider the fact that he's a safety who spent the entirety of last season in the NFL, like in an NFL weight program, only bulking up. That was like his only goal, or his primary goal, I should say. Obviously, he's got to go to meetings and be a great teammate and practice hard and all that stuff. But his primary goal was to bulk up, and he looked small. So Medrano, if he can develop into this man coverage guy who can play the run well, and he's physical and he's aggressive, and the corners are going to hold up in man coverage on the back end, lots of cover one, lots of zero blitzes, then Medrano could get on the field quite a lot early in his career. Very contingent upon his ability to guard tight ends and man, but he could get on the field. And then the last one to close it out here, Johnny Newton, who was the man of the moment in the first preseason game. He had the best play of the game from a Commander's perspective, a sack on a stunt to the outside, him and Jacob Martin combining. Martin did a great job, did his role, collapsed the interior of the pocket. Newton runs to the outside, gets Drake May on the ground, forces a sack fumble, and then Jacob Martin actually recovers the fumble. I mentioned earlier today, Johnny Newton was one of the highest graded pass rushers at Pro Football Focus. DQ sang his praises, but he also threw in Javonte John Baptiste, and Jordan McGee. He said that the three of them has started to add the mental side and the calmness to the athleticism that they had coming out of college. He also said that a big jump could still happen for all of them once they fully blend their skills with their athleticism. So you can get to the outside and you can bend the corner, but can you mix in the hand usage? Can you be technical on the inside? So in Johnny Newton's case, you're still a threat rushing the quarterback from the 3 technique. You can still rip off and break up the middle, and now forget collapsing the pocket. You have split it right up the gut, and you're instantly forcing the quarterback to throw it away, scramble into hopefully more rushers, keeping contained, or you just get him on the ground yourself. DQ also said that Newton has already developed an awful lot as an interior pass rusher, and this is what I want to hear. This is music to my ears. Here's a question. Do you remember who the second pick in the Commanders draft was last year? Jaden Daniels was the first one. Johnny Newton was number 2. It wasn't Sainer Still or Sinnott or McCaffrey or anybody else. It was Johnny Newton. So he has a big obligation to fulfill. This is not only a second round pick, but right at the top of the second round, a defensive tackle. John Allen's out the door. I'm going to guess that Daron Payne is not coming back just by way of his contract, unless he agrees to a significant pay decrease. But I'll be honest, I think he'll get more from another team not named the Commanders. So Johnny Newton with Javon Kinlaw, that's probably going to be your starting defensive tackles next year if Newton can develop this year. And I think he can. I think he does have the physical tools. I wasn't going to judge him for a bad rookie year because he didn't get to practice during the offseason. He never got to acclimate to the NFL game. He was thrown in the middle of the season, and his worst games were against the Eagles, who just have this terrorizing offensive line and this great running game. So wasn't going to judge him too harshly, but he's someone who I really want to see a lot out of this year, and he is living up to that. So that's going to do it for my notes here. Let's come back to the comments here. The live chat, if you guys are in here and you've got any questions or just any comments, any feelings at all, please go ahead and throw them in there. I'm going to get out of here as soon as I get through them. And I've only got one right now. So if you don't get them in the next minute or two, I will probably be out of here. Oh, did not mean to do that. My fault, Doug. Okay, so Doug Springer here says, pay Terry $29 a year and go Skins. Yeah, okay, so $29 million a year. Just in theory, it sounds feasible. It's a little more than I would be willing to go to, but I'm also not Adam Peters. And with the way that it's only a preseason game, but still with the drops, with the inability to separate from man coverage. And let's be honest here, we're judging preseason games and we're thinking, well, this doesn't matter too much. Well, let's just stop and think for a moment here. Terry McLaurin's not going to be on the field without a new contract. Noah Brown, only God knows what's going on with Noah Brown. The kidney injury last year, the weird fall during training camp, and now he's not in the preseason game. I have no clue what his availability is. We don't know that he's going to be on the field. Jalen Lane is not an X receiver. Luke McCaffrey's not an X receiver. Deebo Samuel's not an X receiver. If they keep 6 guys, we're talking about Michael Gallup, who was retired last year, Ja'Cory Brooks, who was an undrafted free agent, and Michael Strachan and Chris Moore. It is just a preseason game that we're watching. But those players we're seeing, they could be the ones tasked with playing an X. Seriously, if Noah Brown's not there and Terry McLaurin's not there, the players who most represent a typical X receiver are Michael Gallup and Ja'Cory Brooks. And again, I would doubt both of them make the roster. Probably only one of them. So it's either going to be a guy who's 30 years old and was retired last year or an undrafted free agent rookie. Those are your options. So Terry, I'm not saying that you sacrifice everything that you have and you overpay. It's not what I'm saying. I have long said I would offer Terry about $27 million a year. 29, if the situation is this dire, I think you should be open to compromising and meeting in the middle. Maybe even you get him down to 28, whatever the case may be. Now, with all that being said, I want to be consistent with a couple of comments that I've responded to. I have heard from the reporting, and I wish I could tell you exactly who. It's been about a week since I've seen it. It might have been John Keim, but that could also be wrong, so don't quote me on it. But the reporting is that there's a separation in guaranteed money on the contract. Originally, we had heard that the Commanders were offering an average annual value of $25 million. We'd heard that Terry and his camp were up at like $32, $33 million, and that seemed to be the divide. But then recently it's been, no, the guaranteed money is the divide. Is it maybe both? Or is it that, okay, we're far apart on the average annual value, but we will take a lower average if you guarantee more money? And I feel like that's the solution that a lot of Commanders fans have been suggesting and maybe what the team is working toward. But we're going to see what happens as this camp continues to go on, because I was talking in my video earlier today that at Sunday's practice, there were a lot of balls on the ground in the end zone because receivers couldn't separate. They couldn't make contested catches, all the stuff that you count on Terry to do. But it's, again, this huge problem, or really an intellectual sort of conversation on how much are you willing to sacrifice for now when your Super Bowl window is still open for 10, 15 years. However long you have Jaden Daniels, that's the Super Bowl window. So how much do you eat into that for this 1 year? Thank you for your comment, Doug. We got Big Obby, Big Obi. I'm sorry. One of those is wrong. One of those is right. I'm just going to assume. So pretend I didn't say the wrong one. Terry is intricate in helping to develop our younger players. His veteran leadership won't just impact our roster now, but also our foreseeable future. 1,000%. Now, just purely from a locker room standpoint and keeping the team together and chemistry and morale and all that stuff, the Commanders have insulated themselves with leaders. So he won't be missed from that perspective, because Bobby Wagner and Von Miller and Austin Eckler and Zach Ertz, they can hold a locker room together. For me, the biggest thing that is being missed with his absence, if we're talking off-field stuff, is that impact in the receiver room specifically. Because Deebo it's his first year, and he's been on his best behavior, really bought into the team stuff. I'm not saying that he's an issue right now, but he was apparently, that's what it seemed, he was a bit of an issue towards the end of his time in San Francisco. Luke McCaffrey's a second-year guy who had less than 200 receiving yards last year. Jalen Lane is a rookie. If they keep Ja'Cory Brooks, he's a rookie. This is a young room, and these are players who have a lot of room to grow. Even Debo, the role that he was used in San Francisco appears to be significantly different from the role that he's going to have with the Commanders. So Terry could help bring him along into that, but him not being there really sets back the development, really just the personal development, the skill work of those players. And also, it hurts the corners. Like, this is something that I've talked about numerous times, specifically leading up to the joint practice with the Patriots. I was like, I really want to see, how does Marshawn Lattimore, how does Trey Amos, how does Mikey Sanders, how are they actually going to hold up in this joint practice? Because all reports were suggesting they looked like a top 10 unit in the NFL. That's what they were ready to become, because they had been shut down in practice. But I wasn't even really concerned that they had picked up on the traits of practicing against the same guys for 2 or 3 months, and they just knew what was going to happen. So, no, they've picked up on the traits, sure, but they've picked up on the traits of players who are not top 10 receivers. Terry McLaurin is a top 10 receiver, or he's right on the periphery of that. So as soon as they stop playing against Michael Strachan, or stop practicing against Michael Strachan and Chris Moore, and they run into Pop Douglas, who, no offense, but Pop Douglas is not exactly a Pro Bowler. Well, he tore them up in the joint practice. And Marshawn Lattimore gave up a touchdown to Kayshon Boutte. And now those guys didn't play in the preseason game. Amos did, and Amos was good. But some of the other guys, like Carlin Vigors, who was supposed to be having a great camp by all accounts, he got torn up in that preseason game. Big Obi, I think it's Big Obi. I'm sorry if it's not. Yes, the receivers are what I was referring to, especially with Lane. Yeah, the Lane connection to McLaurin, the fact that I had said this already, but the fact that he singled him out as someone he really wanted to learn from, someone he really admired, really appreciated. I'm sure there was a bit of regional bias with Lane being in Blacksburg, which is 3-4 hours away from DC, but still, I really do believe the way Lane plays and the way that he could develop in the NFL, the best case of Jalen Lane, he's not going to be jumping out of the gym. He's always going to be 5'9", 5'10". He's not going to have A.J. Brown's muscles, but he's quick, he's fast, he's decisive with the ball in his hands. And if he can really master contested catches, and he can pair deep ball tracking with his ridiculous speed, well, then he becomes such a dynamic receiver. And those skills, the contested catches, the deep ball catches, the tracking, that's what Terry is best at. So I totally understand why you would single out Jalen Lane. And like I said, I still believe Jalen Lane can become a great player, whether Terry agrees to a contract or not. But it's just the question of, is it worth compromising $2-3 million a year to help expedite that process and even make that process more of a guarantee? Or do you hold true to your long-term financial projections? I'm sure they've already targeted free agents they want to sign next year and free agents they want to sign the year after. I did a breakdown in one of my previous videos. I want to say the Commanders have the 4th most cap space next year and maybe the most cap space the year after. But next year, I think they have the fewest players under contract in the league, and the year after, it's the 3rd fewest players under contract. So they are prepared for tons and tons of roster turnover, new players, new signings, extensions, all that stuff. And you're going to have to get to rookie deals in a couple of years. So I'm sure they have all that in their mind, and that's why the McLaurin stuff is also even more dicey, because you don't have a lot of wiggle room knowing how many players you are about to have to sign in the immediate future. But guys, that appears to be the end of the comments, and we are at the end of my material as well. So I really do appreciate you all being here. Again, this is my first live stream. If that doesn't deserve a like, then I don't know what will. I guess I just got to get better content. But I do appreciate you all being here. Seriously, if you're not a live viewer, you're just a regular viewer, I still love you as well. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you have not already. Again, go to the comment section. Let me know your thoughts, as always, on everything that I said. And as I always say, I will catch you in the next one. Have a great day.